What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. It's Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth, officially 1 week away from the start of Patriots training camp. We're almost there, so we're going to turn it over to the defense and special teams preview today. We did offense yesterday, so if you missed that, make sure to go watch that. Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. You can find it there. So we'll get into the defense, special teams, things we're looking forward to in training camp, some positional battles, players to watch in all of that. But before we start, we did get a new trailer yesterday for Forged in Foxborough, episode 2, coming out this Friday. Get everyone nice and pumped up and ready for training camp. We saw a little mic'd up of Mike Vrabel breaking down the huddle. Jabril Peppers, Pop Douglas had some comments. Funny interaction between Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez, where Carlton Davis is like, do you like left or right better? And Gonzo basically says, I don't give a fudge because he is that good. But some good nuggets there. Obviously, the full episode will be fun to watch on Friday. I'm sure we'll talk about it next week a little bit. But Barth, just with that 1 minute, 30-second, 2-minute trailer, did anything specific stand out to you before we get the full episode 2 again on Friday this week?
So I know a lot of people are talking about like Mike Vrabel's comment off the top, which is obviously great, but I look at what Jabril Peppers said, and when he's breaking down that huddle and talks about like, you know, if we want to take advantage of shitty football, we can't do that ourselves. And it's that quote I've been harping on all offseason from Mike Vrabel's introductory press conference that I go back to. Instantly went back to when I heard that was Vrabel saying at the beginning, we're not good enough to take advantage of bad football, and that's where we need to be. That's where we need to start rebuilding this thing. So the fact that here we are 6 months later, here's a player, a leader on the team saying that, breaking down in a huddle, is like that wasn't just some throwaway comment from Vrabel. It seems like it's something he's preaching inside the building, which is good, because we've talked about this, Brian. As weak as their schedule is this year, simply taking advantage of bad football and not shooting themselves in the foot could go a long way for them this year. Definitely. A really long way. So I like that we're still hearing that message here 6 months later.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that stood out to me. And you mentioned just the schedule. I mean, you look at it, you know, the Raiders, we've talked about the Dolphins in our NFL preview, how they could kind of come back to earth. The Steelers, Panthers, like that's your first month. Just taking advantage of bad football there could get you 2 or 3 wins. And then, you know, you have the Saints, the Titans, the Browns later on, you know, the Jets in the division, the Dolphins again later. Like, there are some weak opponents on this team, on this schedule. And if you just do that and take advantage of that bad football, that could steal you some wins. And that's definitely not something they've done in recent years, take advantage of that bad football. So to get back on track there, kind of their first step into this thing, that's a good place to start. So I like how that is kind of maybe one of their rallying cries this year moving forward. So should be a good trailer, good trailer. Should be a good episode 2. Lots of OTAs in minicamp, behind the scenes stuff. So that'll be fun to watch again, coming out on Friday. Patriots.com, Patriots YouTube. You can find it all over on there. But let's jump into our defense in special teams training camp preview. Again, we're going to go just like we did on offense yesterday, go through position by position and break down what we are looking forward to. So we can start up front with that defensive line. Let's start on the edge, because pressure was a problem for the Patriots last year. Last in the league in sacks. They were the only team to not reach 30 total sacks. They were dead last with 28. They go out, they add Harold Landry, they add Caleb Von Chasen, they draft Braden Swinson, all join Keon White and Anthony Jennings. Barth, do you think those investments and additions on the edge will be enough, paired with maybe a Keon White breakout, which we've talked about a lot during the spring? Like, is that enough on the edge there? And it will help with the additions on the interior as well. But is the edge enough? Are you comfortable with where their edge depth is going into the summer right now?
So I compare it kind of to their wide receiver room, in that I don't think it's better than it was last year. I think they have a lot of players who could be good complementary players, but there might be a ceiling on that just because they don't have that guy that's dictating coverage, that's dictating the blocking scheme, right? Like, follow along, Brian. We can do this player for player. So you mentioned Harold Landry. That's Stephon Diggs. Older player, veteran, has been a very high-level player at his position. Diggs higher than Landry, but same idea. Some questions with both. Diggs' questions a little more significant, but a veteran, you're kind of hoping to turn back the clock and would change a lot if he turns back the clock. Keon White, Pop Douglas, guys that have shown tremendous ceilings, but they've come in flashes. Injuries have been a problem. Usage was probably a problem last year. Maybe not a great fit with that coaching staff, but you're expecting that big breakout this year. Braden Swinson, Kyle Williams, that one's kind of obvious. Who else did I like? I was able to do this for 5 or 6 guys. Kayvon Chason, Matt Holland.
Yep.
Have had, baseline solid NFL careers. They've never really popped. They each have one season where you kind of saw a little bit. They're not young, but they're young enough that you wonder if there's a little more they can tap into. But worst case scenario, they're like good depth players. And then Anthony Jennings and Kendrick Bourne, guys that are good football players, but have now been here for a while, different coaching staff, might to be schemed out at this point, replaced by younger players. So I think they're both very similar. I feel free to push back because I said this to somebody the other day and they were like, well, the pass rush is like got really upgraded and the receivers suck. I think we need to get out of the mindset of two things. One, that the Patriots receivers are a dumpster fire. It's not great. It should be much better than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Like the floor is raised, the ceiling's still pretty low, which is concerning, but I think the floor has been raised. And as for the pass rush, and there was one more comp in there. So I just talked about the edge guys, right? A lot of people will tell you that, well, the real juice is going to be in the middle with Christian Barmore and Milton Williams, but it's not, you don't get the same impact on the rest of the defense when your elite rush, when your top rushers are inside and not outside. It's kind of like your top pass catchers being tight ends instead of wide receivers. Having a good tight end can obviously be very useful, but the impact on the rest of the scheme is a little bit less. So Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper to continue that. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, when you go through it like that, the edge guys to the receivers, you definitely see some similarities.
I had one for Kayshon Boutte too, but I can't remember who it was.
There's not many other edge guys.
That's kind of it too. So
like it's just Truman Jones and Elijah Ponder. Is it Elijah Ponder?
Elijah Ponder.
So
maybe it was Jennings and Boutte and not Jennings and Bourne. I don't remember exactly, but like
they both
I don't know. I think they're kind of similar. And that's either going to worry some people about the pass rush or people are going to think I'm being too optimistic about the receivers. The point is, I think both are viewed a little too extremely right now in opposite directions.
Yeah, I am excited. I mean, we've talked so much about Keon White and what he could do, in this new defense under Mike Smith, who coached a lot of these bigger rushers. And if he could really take the next step, that would be a huge game changer for that edge group. I'm also pretty excited about Kayvon Chason, which I think flew under a lot of people's radar. It was 4 or 5 days after the start of free agency. It was just like a 1-year, $3 million deal, just kind of a lottery ticket. But you look at him at the end of last year, he had 4 sacks over the last 6 games for Vegas, and he never lived up to that first round billing with Jacksonville, but he kind of seemed to turn a corner late there. He mentioned he learned a lot from Max Crosby, and then you get to the sprain, and he was pretty involved, like with the first unit, rotating in and out with Landry and Keon at some time. So they seem to have a plan for him, and not saying he's going to become Max Crosby on the edge all of a sudden, but if he can provide you some juice, like, and be a really good third rotational defensive end, edge rusher, and a pure like third down pass rusher, like I think there's a lot of value in there because they need that pass rusher. So he'll be interesting to watch along the edge there. And then, are you nervous at all about Harold Landry? Because you look at the 9 sacks last year, 3rd straight year with 9+ sacks, not counting the 2022 year he missed with the torn ACL. The run defense was still at a pretty high level, but there are those, you go into the deeper numbers, and it's like the pass rush win rate was one of the worst among all edge rushers in football. He's not 30 yet. He's almost 30. He did have the ACL 2 years ago again. Are you worried about him at all, or do you still think he can be, a useful player on the edge there?
Yeah, I I think he can still be a good player. I don't know that he's going to be the player he once was. If again, this goes back to my point. If you're counting on him to be this lead anchor pass rusher, right? If you're counting on him to be a Matthew Judon type, I don't think he can be that at this point in his career. Can he still get to the quarterback at times? Yes. He's going to be really good against the run, which they're going to need. I'm probably more worried about them against the run than the pass. So in that sense, I'm not worried. But if they're thinking he's going to be a 10-sack guy, 12-sack guy, like I don't see that. I don't think they're planning on that, just the way they've built this. But anybody who's expecting that, like, yeah, I would be worried if that's your expectation.
Yeah. I think the way he could get to 9 or, that 9-10 range, like if he's just playing cleanup, like you got Milton Williams and Christian Barmore just pushing the pocket all day, and then Landry's just kind of there to clean up. But if you think I don't see him just, purely going one-on-one against every team's best tackle and getting to 9 or 10 by himself there. But if he can just play that cleanup role, which is obviously valuable when you have those interior defensive linemen.
And I think he can still do that, which is kind of what he's going to need to do. There's a ton put on Barmore and Milton Williams, the way this thing is built. That's just the reality of it. Like the exact situation you guys just laid out. Whether or not those guys ultimately get the sacks and the box score, it's going to be up on those guys to create the havoc, and then everybody else is going to clean it up.
Yep. So let's go to those guys. Along interior a little bit more. Barmore, Milton Williams, obviously leading the way, as we just said. They signed Kairos Tonga, kind of that third rotational, more of a run stopper. They draft Josh Farmer. They join Jeremiah Farms, Jaquelin Roy, still in the mix of depth options. I think the biggest thing, we were just talking Barmore, Milton Williams, is just the usage for Milton Williams, right? Coming from Philly, where he was part of a stacked defensive line group, never really played more than 50% of defensive snaps. Now he's the guy next to Christian Barmore. Like that number is going to be probably up to 70, 80%. So can he handle that workload? You just said a lot is going to be put on those two guys. Do you think they can handle that? Pretty much straightforward there.
So my bigger concern is the run. Just it's a small group. It's a small group, and that's part of what you get with this defense. Like they're going to be more aggressive, they're going to be quicker, they're going to give up size. We'll get to Robert Spillane in a second and how he'll factor in this. I think Farmer is might end up being a pretty pivotal player for them, because like you said with Milton Williams, like that's my concern with him. I don't have concern about his pass rush dropping off. He's not next to Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis anymore. Well, Christian Barmore is not Jalen Carter, but he also is still pretty freaking good. And I trust Milton Williams to be able to kind of run that 2-man game with Barmore and still have success as a pass rusher. I worry about him against the run, which I don't want to say he was bad against the run in Philly, because he wasn't. He just never played against the run. They didn't need him to. That line was stacked. You signed that contract, and he's talked about it. Mike Vrabel's talked about it. You're going to play the run here. So if he struggles there, well, now what are you going to do? Because again, you have that small group. That's where you might need Joshua Farmer, who is more of a run player at Florida State, to step up. Because I don't know, like Tonga can stop the run, but he's a run-specific player. You're not putting him on the field on 1st and 10, right?
And
so you're going to need somebody else who can go out there and do that.
Even him, he's only played over 30% of a team's defensive snaps like once in his career. So he's a little bit, and he's bounced around teams. Like he's a little bit of an unknown himself if you're going to put him into a bit of an expanded role where, you had like the Devon Godshaws and Daniel Quales and those guys in that rotational role. Like Tonga is a bit of a question mark if he can handle that expanded role as well. So definitely, they lost some of that beef up the middle. It was a concerted effort to get quicker. They want to play more aggressive, play on the other side of the line of scrimmage, but holding up against the run will be interesting there. Because if you go back to 23, like Milton Williams was very efficient against the run, but still he just didn't do it much. So go into this expanded role. Interesting to continue to track that. But behind those guys, the linebackers, they signed Robert Spillane to the big 3-year, $33 million deal. He is the unquestioned leader of this group, maybe the leader of the defense from like an emotional standpoint, probably wearing the green dot, it looks like. I think, he fits perfect behind that aggressive defensive line because he's just flies around the field. He's an energizer bunny, right? He's going to be playing backup to those guys along the second level. But really the question is who is next to Robert Spillane right now, because Jelani Tavai held that like early down role in the spring, but then he hurts his calf and we haven't seen him since. Should be back by training camp or early in training camp. We'll see. We'll hopefully get an update within the next week. And then, you have Christian Ellis. They retained. They matched the offer sheet. They signed Jack Gibbons in free agency. We saw Marte Mapu playing linebacker in the spring, although he was, of course, limited too. And then Monty Rice and Cam Riley back up those guys there. So do you like Spillane as the lead dog there? And who do you see playing next to him and kind of taking that role?
So Spillane's going to be a very key player for this defense because we talk about the defensive line being more aggressive, and that means sometimes plays are going to sneak through, and that's why you get smaller and quicker linebackers. So you have somebody who can cover more ground and essentially be the cleanup crew, and that's going to be Robert Spillane. I think, who's next to him situationally, probably more of Jack Gibbons on those early downs. I think on later downs, it's definitely going to be Christian Ellis. They gave him a good amount of money. I thought he was impressive in coverage last year, so he kind of looks the part of a third down linebacker. And then who fills out the depth is a bigger question to me. Do they still want and we've talked about this, do they still want for certain situations that 250-pound downhill guy? That's maybe how Tavai gets on the roster. If not, and they want to keep that same prototype, they have been working Mapu at linebacker. So this is the kind of linebacker that he was coming out of college. This is those optimistic people who saw that pick thought, hey, maybe this is them modernizing the linebacker position. Instead, they moved him to safety, obviously. But, 3 years later, it may be too little, too late, but he could be back in a more comfortable spot. And then you had both Monty Rice and Cam Riley make a couple of plays in the spring. So maybe those guys get in the mix if Mapu's banged up and Tavai's not the kind of player they want.
Yeah. I feel like Mapu's kind of the X factor in this group. Like now that he's back at linebacker, just can he build off kind of that what you saw in college now that he's there? And a lot of that, he got the size, the athleticism is intriguing. The mental side probably has to catch up a little bit. And then he's just got to stay healthy. That's the big thing, right? He played 10 games last year. He spent both of his, rookie and sophomore summers sidelined for much of it. So, and then you saw him in the spring again, limited. So he's got to be healthy and got to be on the field. But, him kind of emerging would be a big thing for that second level, I think. But I do hope they keep Tavai around just so they have like one bigger body. You mentioned playing the run is kind of the worry with the lighter defensive linemen. Like, do you hope they keep one bigger body linebacker around there to help in at least early down or, certain goal line and short yardage situations?
I'd like to see it. I'm not, holding it out. I think they might just want to be smaller at the position, but I do think just like they could use another nose tackle, like those guys are valuable in certain situations. They can play special teams. You have 53 spots. I don't think they need to load up or go get Ray Lewis, but having somebody who can play that role when needed, I think would be helpful.
All right, so there is your first and second level of the defense there. Before we jump back to the secondary, I want to have a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. And do you guys know ball? Because the football season is right around the corner, so we'll be putting our Patriots players in our Prize Picks lineup, but throughout the rest of the summer, baseball will be back shortly from the All-Star break. Women's basketball is in full force, and the best place to cash in on your favorite sports is Prize Picks. If you're looking at the diamond, you can pick more or less on player stats like hits, home runs, strikeouts, and more for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today, and even take advantage of their weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday projections can be discounted from 15 to 25%. I'm going to keep rolling when the Red Sox are back with Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer, even throw Romy Gonzalez in there to finish off the big three. More than half a hit, more than 1.5 total bases, RBIs, home runs. If you want to get really crazy, all of those guys have been raking on and off the field lately. So throw them into your lineup and download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup all over on Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, to the Patriots secondary here. We'll start with the cornerback position. Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, obviously leading it off. That's your 1-2. Put them on whatever sideline. You hope they'll just lock the opposition down in man coverage. But Barth, where are you at with the nickel spot? We saw Marcus Jones, a little bit of Alex Austin in the spring, and there's a lot of just young, versatile depth behind them, right? With Isaiah Bolden, Marcellus Dial, they draft Kobe Minor, even a guy like Miles Battle, intriguing size, 6'3". Saw him in the Week 18 game last year, which it was the Week 18 game last year, but a couple pass deflections on Keon Coleman, who was an early round pick. So Davis and Gonzalez seem set, but where are you at with the rest of that cornerback depth chart right now?
So you're going to have Marcus Jones in the slot. Alex Austin is going to be a sneaky pivotal player for them because he's going to be their third boundary corner. And he's also probably going to be their backup slot, not even really backup slot, their big slot. So when they want to just have a bigger secondary, like against Miami, right, you're going to play Marcus Jones. When you play, so like they play the Bengals, right, who have a bigger wide receiver group, that might be a game where we see more Alex Austin. That's later in the year, obviously. So things could change between now and then. But he's going to wear a lot of hats. He's going to wear a lot of hats for them. I'm excited to see it. He had that really good spring last year, solid summer, got hurt early in the season. He never seemed to get back on track from that, but I like the way he plays. He's got good size. He's physical. He's got good instincts. Like, I'm kind of excited to see him in a more front-facing role. After that, so that's four guys right there between Davis, Gonzalez, Austin, and Jones. And then I think it's one or two more you're probably talking about to make the team. And it's a lot of those young guys you listed. Miles Battle, Isaiah Bolden, DJ
Dial.
James, Marcellus Dial. So I want to get into a couple of those guys. We'll do special teams at the end because special teams are going to be a huge factor in winning that last spot or two. But that's going to be competitive. There's going to be real competition for that last corner spot or two.
Definitely. And again, a lot of those guys can play inside, outside, just to add to that competition. So, but just with Alex Austin, like I thought he ended last year pretty strongly, and that was the second time he did that. Like in his rookie year, he comes in midway through the year, ended pretty strongly, at that interception against Buffalo. So just the size he could bring in the slot, and then you'd love to log Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis on the boundary, but you look at Carlton Davis, he's missed time. He's missed multiple games like every year of his career. 6-7 years in, he's pencil him in to probably miss 2 or 3 games. So you need another guy out there. So if that could be Alex Austin, and you can keep Marcus Jones in the nickel, and then Christian Gonzalez on the boundary, and plug Alex Austin there. He's going to be a big piece. I'd imagine he plays, if he can stay healthy, he's going to play a good amount of snaps, moving around the secondary and different cornerback spots. But we'll get to the rest of the depth in the special teams and move over to safeties. Most of the top 4 returned from last year in Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Jalen Hawkins, and Del Pettis, but they also used a early 4th round pick on rookie Craig Woodson. They signed Marcus Epps in free agency, and then undrafted free agent Josh Minkins, Jordan Polk in the mix as well. I think the big thing in this room is health right now. Like, where is Kyle Duggar at after, the ankle injury last year that had off-season surgery, because he just did not look like himself at all. So you hope he's healthy. Marcus Epps also coming off a torn ACL. So we didn't get the full look at this group, kind of like the wide receiver position in the spring. There were some guys out, there were some guys limited. We saw a lot of Jalen Hawkins in place of Kyle Duggar, a good amount of Craig Woodson. Seems like he could have a role early on. But Barth, are you still at, kind of Duggar and Peppers as your 1-2, and then we're mixing and matching some guys behind them, or where are you at with that safety room kind of hierarchy?
So this is a big one just in terms of health, right? If Duggar and Peppers are both fully healthy, which neither was really at any time last year, that's one of the better. That's really my only question with their secondary is, are those two guys healthy? If those two guys are fully healthy, this should be one of the best secondaries in football. And then Craig Woodson had a nice spring. We'll see how he can pick up from there. It's from there is the question. You kind of touched on it. Like, who's going to be the deep rotational safety? Who's going to get that last spot? We saw Jalen Hawkins a ton in the spring, which I think is relevant. The fact that they gave him that many reps, that seems to suggest somebody that they would want on the team. But at the same time, Marcus Epps wasn't fully healthy. So if and when he is this summer, does he start taking reps away from Hawkins? Does that become a battle? And let's not forget Del Pettis either, who had a good year last year, and maybe he's just one of these guys that kind of falls out of favor because it's a different coaching staff, but he'll be in the mix as well. They could, I said before, they're going to keep 5, maybe 6 corners. That could be the difference between 4 or 5 safeties, depending on how that other cornerback spot goes. These guys are kind of all competing with each other. The other thing is, like, I'll be looking to see this summer, does Brendan Schooler, do we see the return of the Longhorn package? For all last year's coaching staff got wrong, and don't get me wrong, they were wrong quite a bit.
The
Longhorn,
cool.
The 2 things. They somehow nailed the hardest thing you can do, which is rookie quarterback development, and Joe Milton. And then the Longhorn package was kind of cool. So I'm not saying I need to see it all the time, but just getting his athleticism on the field defensively in a game that's leaning more and more on just raw athletic ability, I'm curious to see if because we saw they didn't break it out until halfway through the year last year, but we saw them running him on defense in the spring and summer. So I'll be interested to see if that comes back.
Yeah, they kind of went away because under Bill, like, he would always just be off to the side, doing special teams drills with Slater. And then last year, he was playing, mixing in on safety with some of the secondary units. I was going through their schedule. They don't play many rushing quarterbacks, so I don't know if that would factor into it. Like Josh Allen week 5, Cam Ward week 7. Who the hell knows? The Cleveland starting in week 8. Lamar's not till week 16.
They'll have Justin Fields.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
skip over Justin Fields.
Fields is week 11. That was down there, so
yeah,
they'll have some opportunities to break that out. They broke it out against Caleb last year, so interesting, definitely to track Schooler's involvement. I'm excited for another rookie, Craig Woodson. Like, seems like you heard after the draft, like, smart, really good communicator in the secondary, so it probably wasn't a surprise that he was pretty involved, like, from day one in the spring. But like, there were times with the top offense where he was, if they went big nickel, he was a third safety out there. He was around the ball a lot. He had an interception in that 4 interception practice from Drake. He had one of those. He was around the ball a couple other times. So he could kind of carve out a role for himself pretty early on, it feels like, in his rookie year. But Duggar, Peppers, if they're healthy, that's the big thing. Epps will be interesting when he gets back because he has experience in that free safety type of mold, if they want to lead on that from a rotational standpoint. But with the corners, with the safeties, and we'll kind of transition this into special teams, like, that's a big spot where a lot of these depth guys, you mentioned Del Pettis, even back with the corners, like Isaiah Bolden, Marcellus Dial was a gunner last year. Like, that's a big spot for a lot of these guys to be that 5th corner or the 4th and 5th safety. So do you like any of those guys early in this part of the summer to kind of separate themselves from what they can do on special teams?
Well, I mean, Dial was a core special teamer for them last year. Pettis was a core special teamer for them last year. So I think those guys that have done it. I think the big one for me, because they tweaked the kickoff rule again, touchbacks now at the 35. So there's a lot of special teams coordinators, Jeremy Springer included, have said they think there's going to be a lot more kick returns this year, because with the touchback at the 35 on kickoff, you're really going to not want to put the ball in the end zone, and it's tough to kind of sit on it. You're taking a significant risk if you try to let it bounce into the end zone on a kickoff. So, do we finally get to see Isaiah Bolden there? And we saw it a little bit in the spring, but that kickoff returner is sneaky one of the bigger battles this summer, and it's going to be a fun one. Obviously, it's going to be limited exposure compared to some other positions. They just don't work on that as much, and it's really hard to judge kickoff returns and non-contact practices, even padded non-contact, non-live tackling practices. So that's probably going to have to be one in the preseason. And who knows how many kickoff returns they'll get in the preseason. Remember a couple of years ago when they had the Folk and Ryland, that battle where, like, they only kicked 3 field goals the whole preseason,
and they were all Nick Folk.
Right. So it made it really hard to judge. So hopefully, I don't want to say hopefully they give up a lot of touchdowns, but hopefully they get a good amount of kick returns to kind of go off of this summer. But I think that's a sneaky big battle, and that's where Bolden could certainly factor in.
Yeah. And also, like, our team's going to want to return, with the new kickoff return, like, are they going to want to return and practice it, or are they going to want to try to, like, hide stuff if they can? Like,
I feel like that's one that ever since this new rule, usually the kickoff stuff gets drilled pretty heavily those 2 weeks between the end of camp and the first game, when the media is not out there for the full practice. So I'm not holding my breath on seeing a ton of that.
Yeah. So I was trying to remember who was returning kicks in the spring. Like Gibson was still back there. Bolden, you mentioned. Travion Henderson, I think, was
Yeah,
a part of that
Henderson would
group.
be a really good candidate in this, unless like McDaniels has had that thing in the past where more valuable were players, unless it's a big spot, he won't use them as returners. Like with Edelman towards the end, when he kind of grew into that major role on offense, fourth quarter, 1-score game, you might put him back there, but they wouldn't do it regularly. So how does he view Henderson? But also it could be a thing where this is a more important play than it used to be. And It is kind of an extension of the offense because you're determining your starting field position. So Henderson's going to be in the mix. Gibson's going to be in the mix. Hopefully Bolden's in the mix. And somebody asked me the other day if Kyle Williams could be in the mix there. That's tough to say. I feel like he has the physical makeup, but he didn't return a ton of kicks in college, did he?
I don't believe so. He was doing punts during the spring, but I don't believe he was doing kick returns.
Yeah, trying to think, because kick return, you want a little more size and the ability to take on
a tackler in the hole. Size last year, yeah, that was something Springer talked about multiple times, like
right,
because they used Gibson a lot, and Gibson, 6 feet 230, like so he's a little thicker, and they like that. So Williams is 6 feet 180. I think
he returned one
190
kickoff in college, by the way.
One, okay, so yeah,
so it's probably not that.
Probably more of a punt return candidate.
Right. Punt return, you want just shiftier because it's make a defender miss and go. Kickoff return, you're planning more. You just want, and it's more about quickness than straight line speed. Kickoff return, you want a guy that can meet a tackler in a hole, and you want the straight line speed. So that's Travion Henderson. It's Antonio Gibson. If I had to pick a wide receiver, wasn't Kayshon Boutte returning kicks at one point last year? Or am I imagining that? Or 2 years ago?
I think I'm imagining that. Well, Javon Baker did it.
Javon Baker did, but it didn't go well, right? If I remember correctly.
He tried to hurdle a guy, and then he made it might have been the Chargers game late in the year. Like he muffed one at the goal line and then decided to bring it out still. And then the second one, he tried to like hurdle a guy along the sideline, and then they were just like, okay, enough of this, and they pulled him. So it was a lot of Gibson, Jermichael Hasty early in the year
not here
was in that role.
So yeah, that's where I think it's Henderson, it's Isaiah Bolden, it's Antonio Gibson. Pop Douglas is more of a punt returner. They don't really have a ton of like guys that profile as kick returners, honestly. I mean, I'm sure Christian Gonzalez would be like amazing at it, but you're not going to have him do that.
That would be sweet. Yeah, I don't think Boutte ever did it.
Jabril Peppers was a decent punt returner back in the day. Now he's got to be fully healthy for this. I feel like his skill set would profile some to kick returns. I wonder if he'd get a look.
He would probably love that if he was healthy too.
Yeah.
He would love that. Because he is, he's 5'11", like 220. We know how jacked up he is, so he would.
Yeah.
That would be fun to watch. Polk did a more punt returns. Chisholm was in the punt return group, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think either of those guys have the straight line speed to return kicks, though.
Someone said Schooler.
No, you want him as a blocker. You want him as a lead blocker.
Yeah, he's everywhere else on the unit.
Right.
So yeah, hopefully we get some Isaiah Bolden in that more prominent kick return role. But just to wrap up special teams, we do have a kicker competition still because there's 2 kickers on the roster, even though it looks like Borregales' job, Parker Romo, is still on the roster. And then, we have another rookie in the unit, Julian Ashby, long snapper. Then the veteran of the group now is Bryce Behringer. So out of the pure specialists, what's your eye on entering camp here?
Just the overall operation. Like you said, I think we kind of know who's going to win that kicker battle, right? So does it all look clean? 2 new pieces, a lot of moving parts. I don't remember any bad snaps in the spring. I think there was 1 bad hold, but just a clean operation.
Yep. Yeah, 2/3 are new of that operation. So if it's clean, don't want to be saying Julian Ashby's name a lot unless he gets some opportunities downfield and coverage, right? That kind of seems like that spawned that draft pick. So hopefully we're talking about him downfield and not just the snaps there in the special teams snaps and all that. So, anything else? Defense, special teams, big picture to wrap up?
I think that's pretty much it for me.
All right. So I'll end with this because I think we do this we've done this the last 2 years. It is open to the public training camp. So for anyone going, fans, how does Alex Barth watch a training camp practice? What tips, tricks does he have for anyone who wants to come and kind of watch it from a reporter's point of view there?
So first off, make sure you get your roster, make sure your phone's charged, make sure you have, bring binoculars if you can, and sunscreen. Sunscreen's a big one.
Sunscreen is
huge. For me, a couple of things is it could, like, if you don't know where to look, I get that question the most. Like, how do you know what to watch? There's a couple different ways. One is just look where the coaches are looking, right? It should be easy. Like, you should be able to identify the coach. You'll see Vrabel, trust me. He'll jump out right away. McDaniel still has his visor. You'll be able to identify Terrell Williams, and even the positional coaches. I think it's just common sense. Like, if they're looking at something, it's important. So look at what they're looking at. And that might be tough with Vrabel because he's all over the place and it's a lot.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's nothing wrong with following the ball, like, in plays, but also if you do that, you are going to miss things. And if you want to see a certain player, like, if you follow the ball, you may not see Christian Gonzalez once because he might not get targeted, right? So there will be times that I'll just kind of be like, all right, I'm going to watch Christian Gonzalez for a little bit. And it helps to work in teams. So, I'll talk with Brian or Mike or Evan or whoever I'm with, or Matt Dolph. And, okay, like, you watch this, I'll watch that, especially when they go split field. But, like, sometimes it's worth deciding before a play, okay, I'm going to watch, this wide receiver, this corner. Like, there's probably going to be times when it's Diggs Gonzalez. I'm not going to be looking at the ball. I'm going to be watching Diggs Gonzalez, or I'll watch the ball for somebody else to watch Diggs Gonzalez, right? Something like that. Or you say, I want to watch this offensive lineman, or I want to watch this safety. And sometimes you do watch the ball or whatever, but, like, kind of go into each play knowing what you want to see. That helps. And then, if you're if you go to camp with a buddy, all right, hey, I'm watching this, you watch that. And then understanding so another thing that's important to remember is when we talk about a guy having a good day versus a bad day, one good play doesn't make a player's day. One bad play doesn't ruin it. We'll mention those, obviously, but if a guy gets beat on one coverage badly, like, let's say a corner gets his ankles broken on a route, but he locks down every receiver he faces the rest of the day, versus a corner that is kind of just one or two steps behind the receiver every day, every snap of the day. And it's like, he's not getting beat mind-blowingly, but he's never really quite right there to break up the pass. The guy who got put on his face or put on his ass is obviously going to get talked about a lot. But to me, it's the guy who was just regularly getting beat, maybe not in as much highlight fashion, that had the worst day. So don't let one play dictate your entire view of a player. Don't let one practice dictate your entire view of a player's summer. And then on top of that, understand kind of the hierarchy of what you're watching. So, one-on-ones, there's positional drills, which is against air. There's one-on-ones, there's 7-on-7, there's 11-on-11. The closer you are to real football, the more weight you put on something. One-on-ones, the receiver always is going to have an advantage because especially a lot of those deep routes or double breaking routes in a game, you're passing off to somebody else in coverage who's not there in a one-on-one. Offense on the other side where you get to blocking, it's the other side. The defense usually has the advantage there because you can't quick throw. There's no help coming. You just have to win that assignment one-on-one. There's also room to move side to side, which you may not have in a game. So there's that thing. Non-padded versus padded. Is there music playing? That's usually an indication that they're upping the intensity. Is the clock running, right? Are they keeping track of down and distance? 11-on-11 just straight up versus 11-on-11 in a 2-minute drill. There's more weight that's going to go to that live clock situation. So understanding the different reps within the practice and then the different practices, non-padded to padded to joint practices. You'll obviously know if you're watching a joint practice, but not every rep is created equally. And we're going to weigh things differently. I talked about this in the offensive preview. I'm not really going to put much stock into the first 4 days of offensive line results because they're non-padded Like there's just not that much there for me realistically. So for good non-padded practices for an offensive lineman, and then if he has a bad practice, the first practice in pads, it's not 4 versus 1. You don't weigh those that way. So those are kind of the quick notes for me to keep in mind.
Yeah. And I hope we get a lot of those competitive periods. They did a lot of that in the spring, and those are, always the best. We'll get some one-on-ones as always, but I hope it's a lot of team competitive with the music on. They're tracking down in distance. They have the clock running. Those are the best ones, the full team periods there. But, back to your first point, you're not going to see everything. Don't get anxious if you miss something. Like it is best. You have to bounce ideas off other people. You need multiple set of eyes, because if the wide receivers and corners are working on one field, you can't watch them and the offensive and defensive linemen on the other field. So you are going to miss some things. But when they're going team, pick out matchups, as you said, like in the non-padded practices, maybe that's when you want to watch Diggs versus Gonzo, and then when the pads come on, okay, we're moving inside to Keon White and Will Campbell and watching them go at it. Watch Milton Williams, Barmore. So just pick out what you want to watch, what you're looking forward to, and lock into those, and move around, find a couple of those matchups to watch. But it is a ton of fun. If you can make it, would definitely recommend going down a few times throughout the summer. And I believe that is all for our preview. So we will let you guys know the schedule for next week. Mike Vrabel is speaking Tuesday. So if there is something extremely noteworthy, or, some guys might get put on PUP, we'll come on and do a quick breakdown. But then the first practice is Wednesday. So we'll be back to live shows every day of training camp practice. And we'll probably do the same thing similar to what we did last year. We'll end the week with a crossover with Mike and Taylor. So tons of content coming. Make sure you guys are locked on Patriots Press Pass. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe wherever else you get your podcasts. If you're not on video, if you're audio only, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else, please subscribe there as well. And if you're on Patriots Press Pass, while you subscribe, make sure you turn on those notifications so you know when we are going to go live after training camp. It can be pretty hectic sometimes and a quick turnaround. So turn on your notifications. You'll know right when we are going live and when any other new content is being posted from us, Mike and Taylor, and anyone else on Patriots Press Pass as well. So make sure you guys do that. You can also follow Barth on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for his Patriots training camp coverage. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com. Tons of those positional previews for training camp. And of course, we'll have daily Patriots training camp coverage on there as well. So have a great weekend, everyone. Rest up for training camp next week, and we will see you guys there.
Bye.